All right, welcome to today's Explainer. Gather around, grab a seat, because we're getting a little analytical and, well, a lot terrified today. We're diving headfirst into a massive, chilling compilation of 26 true internet horror stories. But instead of just reading them in the dark to get a quick scare, we're actually going to dissect the very anatomy of fear itself. We're breaking down the source material to see exactly how and why these terrifying encounters happen.
Listen to this. "Happy Halloween, little birdie. Now fly away." That is a direct quote literally whispered into the ear of a terrified woman trapped on an empty subway car by a man who was later revealed on the evening news to be an escaped murderer. It's the absolute ultimate jump scare to kick things off, isn't it? Today we'll be analyzing the psychology behind these very real encounters to see what makes them so profoundly unsettling to the human mind.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll be decoding true horror stories, then looking at stalkers in plain sight. After that, we'll cover the terror of creepy dolls, encounters with unexplained phenomena, and finally wrap up with some crucial lessons from the nightmares.
Section 1. Stalkers in Plain Sight. The terrifying reality of the human threat. Before we even touch ghosts or ghouls, we have to look at the incredibly grounded, unsettling reality of human predators found throughout this source material. And this brilliantly illustrates the stalker archetypes. These are the monsters breathing down your neck while you're just out running errands, you know? Predators use incredibly varied tactics depending entirely on their environment. A young woman in a retail fitting room faced a creep using intimidation, trying to simply wait her out. She survived by using the buddy system to escape. On a dark highway, a couple was ambushed by a naked man with a hatchet using diversion tactics. And in a brightly lit Walmart aisle, a man resorted to brazen physical assault before the victim loudly reported him. The environment completely dictates the threat.
But stalking isn't always an immediate attack. Let's walk through this terrifying timeline from a toy store employee's experience. Month 1 starts with a highly inappropriate comment from a so-called creepy dad. By month 3, he's just sitting outside the store eating ice cream, staring at her for an entire hour. Month 4, he's intensely pacing the mall. And month 5, the ultimate escalation, waiting by her car in a pitch-black parking lot. It just shows how quickly a seemingly normal, if uncomfortable, customer interaction metastasizes into predatory stalking.
Imagine being trapped in a moving car where you literally can't just walk away. On the left is what victims are praying is happening, an overly friendly rideshare driver just making polite conversation. But on the right is the terrifying reality from our source material, a predator secretly logging the passenger's home address into his GPS, demanding she go to dinner with him, and then parking outside her house in the dark just to see if she was lying about having company.
Human threats are terrifying, for sure, mostly because of their malice. But what happens when the horror isn't human at all, but an object just staring back at you? Let's smoothly pivot to a completely different kind of fear. Section 2. The terror of creepy dolls, trapped in the uncanny valley. We are now transitioning from the grounded threat of stalkers into the deeply unsettling psychological realm involving porcelain dolls. Now, to understand why these freak us out so much, we have to look at the uncanny valley. It's that eerie, skin-crawling feeling you get from objects that look almost, but not exactly human. The source material's haunted porcelain dolls perfectly embody this psychological phenomenon. They look like us, sure, but there's absolutely no soul behind those painted glass eyes. Check out this deeply disturbing detail from the Victorian house story. That beautiful, green-eyed, red-haired porcelain doll wasn't just a toy. It was actually crafted using the real hair of an 8-year-old girl who had died in that exact same house. The real terror hit when the narrator's father explicitly locked the expensive dolls away in the attic, which, as we all know from basically every horror story ever, absolutely never works. Sure enough, he bursts into her bedroom to find that very doll, along with the rest of the attic collection, silently surrounding his daughter's bed in the dead of night. No way.
Or take the woman in Brisbane. After unpacking her childhood porcelain dolls, she experienced a rapidly escalating timeline of paranormal symptoms, extreme night terrors, unexplained scratching inside closets, the terrifying sight of glowing red eyes appearing on her pet cat, and straight-up demonic faces reflecting in lamp bases. Recognizing that objects can carry energy, throwing the dolls into an industrial bin immediately and permanently cured the haunting. Honestly, sometimes the most practical solution really is the best one.
Section 3. Encounters with unexplained phenomena. Plunging into the terrifying depths of the unknown.
We are now shifting from haunted objects to full-blown supernatural and unexplained events that completely defy logic and science. Now, what's really interesting about this is the quote itself. "I am getting it already." When my husband arrives, tell him I saw him, and I will come for him. This was spoken to an emergency room doctor by a heavily bandaged patient on Halloween night. The horrific catch? The doctor found out the very next morning that the patient had actually died hours before they even had this conversation. And later that week, her husband died under incredibly mysterious circumstances. Just chillin'.
Look at the stark contrast here from the farmhouse party story. A group of college kids go down to a dusty basement for some wine. A friend hears whimpering and sees a frail woman holding her knees. The innocent assumption, of course, is that it's just a homeless person seeking shelter from the cold on Halloween night. But the horrifying reality uncovered by police the next day? A hidden space in the brick wall containing the skeletal remains of the owner's missing aunt, murdered decades prior.
The occult is equally unforgiving. Let's map out the rapid escalation of a Christmas Eve Ouija board session. At 11 p.m., two friends crack open the board. At 11:15, they ask an entity to move an ornament. Literally 1 minute later, a girl-shaped ornament on the tree spins rapidly counterclockwise. Terrified, they hide the board in a clothes box under a bed. But by 8 a.m., after a night of horrifying nightmares, the box is found mysteriously open. Dabbling in the unknown yields some incredibly rapid physical manifestations.
And sometimes the unexplained wears a familiar, trusted face. A young boy goes to visit the sweet neighborhood lady known as Trick-or-Treat Granny, but instead of a kind smile, he finds her sitting on the floor like a frog, eyes blood red, violently hopping toward him, with saliva dripping from her mouth. The next morning, his parents reveal the crushing truth. Granny had suffered a massive heart attack and died that exact evening. What he saw was a deeply unsettling, grotesque manifestation of her final moments that completely defies any rational explanation.
Sometimes the phenomena is a terrifying blend of virtual obsession and physical horror. Trust me, guys, it's so much more fun in real life. This is a deeply grim quote from a college student who took an online social deduction game way, way too far. The tragedy unfolded on campus as the student, driven by a game that blurred the lines of reality, ultimately took the lives of his classmates in a devastatingly violent act. The corruption of innocence is another huge recurring theme here. Contrast the joyful imagery of a festive mall Santa handing out gifts with the absolute nightmare of a mother and daughter being stalked to their home. A serial killer actually used a Santa suit as camouflage to break into houses searching for children and laughing in the air vents. It forced a terrified mother to resort to desperate measures, literally hacking through a closet door with an axe just to pull her child to safety.
Finally, Section 4, Lessons from the Nightmares, The Survivor's Playbook.
These stories are completely horrifying, yes, but they're also instructive. What can these 26 terrifying case studies actually teach us about situational awareness and survival? Think of these as a playbook written in the adrenaline of the survivors themselves. Watch your surroundings as if your life depends on it. Never ignore your gut feeling when someone seems off. Use the buddy system, especially at night. Discard social politeness entirely if you feel threatened. And never, ever follow a stranger, no matter what they promise you.
If you ever find yourself in a terrifying situation, walk yourself through these actionable steps. First, assess your environment for immediate exits. Next, loudly vocalize your boundaries to break the bystander effect. And lastly, alert authorities immediately without hesitation. The girl cornered in the fitting room and the woman physically assaulted at Walmart survived specifically because they broke the rules of politeness, made a massive scene, and got out. Out of the 26 massive, sprawling stories we analyzed from this source material, the victims who made it out entirely untouched all shared one core trait. They paid attention and they acted fast. They didn't wait around to see if the threat was real, they just assumed it was, and they survived.
When we break down the threat proximity data, the vast majority of encounters, that's Category 1 right there, happen in public spaces like malls and subways. Category 2 is private property, and Category 3 is isolated areas. What this tells us is that the highest volume of these terrifying scares happened in broad daylight or crowded public spaces. It proves definitively that monsters don't just hide in the dark woods, guys. They are standing right behind you in line. Which leaves us with one final very important thought to wrap up this explainer. After dissecting these real-life stalkers, uncanny objects, and unexplained phenomena, are you paying enough attention to the shadows around you? Keep your eyes open, stay safe out there, and seriously, never ignore your gut.